Hey there, superstar. Watching this video is already a great choice. Subscribing? That's elite level genius. Let's jump in. There she was, sitting right across the table, and she hit me with a line that carried an unsettling calm. I don't regret a thing. Now she probably thought her words would sting, but they really didn't. All they did was confirm what I'd already figured out. The woman sitting there wasn't my wife anymore, at least not in any sense of the word that mattered. Sure, the ring was still on her finger, and she went by my last name. But things like love, respect, and basic decency had vanished long ago. In its place stood this hardened version of her, casually sipping on her Pinot Noir like it was the most normal Tuesday night ever. While she was all cool and collected, I was in no rush with my own wine. It wasn't nerves, those were long gone, but more a matter of soaking up the irony of it all. Little did she know what the evening had in store. I bet she thought this was some sort of last resort dinner, maybe my attempt to salvage what was pretty much a dead marriage, complete with emotional speeches, talks about the kids, or begging for another chance. But she was way off base. Tonight was anything but a rescue mission. It was the burial service. A waiter walked over then, a young guy whose uniform was a little too big for him, and asked if we were ready to order. She beamed and said yes, but I told him to give us another minute. Not really for deciding on food. I'd made up my mind on skipping that. But she didn't need to know. She turned her gaze back to me, giving her wine a little swirl like she was about to comment on its qualities. I mean, can we just be honest? She chimed in, sounding casual and slightly amused. You knew, right? You must have had some idea. I nodded. Yeah, I said honestly. I had started piecing it all together months ago. The late gym visits where her makeup stayed flawless, new lingerie that somehow never made it to our room, and the dwindling affection. My calm demeanor seemed to her like I was in denial. I thought so, she said with a slight smirk. You always seem like the type who'd rather pretend everything's perfect than deal with reality. Keep up appearances, right? I didn't bite. That was her strategy, to poke and provoke. But without a reaction, she was losing her footing, while I stayed steady. Her smile started to slip. The restaurant was small, classy, and cozy. One of those places with soft jazz playing and napkins folded like little works of art. I picked it purposefully, aiming for a vibe that was serene and in control, making her think this was a date, a new beginning. She dressed for the part too. Tight little black dress, curled hair, and perfume I hadn't caught a whiff of in ages. But I wasn't here for any of that charade. This might sound cold, she continued, but I don't feel guilty. I doubt I ever will. I nodded, taking another deliberate sip and setting my glass down gently. I believe you, I said, catching how she blinked once. Not more, but I noticed. She was anticipating a confrontation, maybe a threat. The silence had her off kilter. You're not even going to ask me why? She said, voice growing slightly tense. No. You're just not going to say anything. I will, I replied, checking my watch casually. Just not yet. She glanced at my watch and back at me, looking confused. Perfect. You brought me here for what? To sit in silence and pretend you're above all this? She leaned in, trying to figure out my game. No, I said. I brought you here so you'd feel comfortable saying whatever you needed, to feel strong and in control. Excuse me, she challenged. Because I knew, I pressed on, that tonight would be the last night you'd feel like that. She narrowed her eyes. You think you're threatening me? No, I said calmly. Threats are for people who haven't already taken action. Now I could see it, the flicker of uncertainty, that gut feeling telling her maybe she wasn't holding all the cards. She opened her mouth, but I lifted a hand. I let you talk, I said, still calm. Now it's my turn. I reached into my coat, pulled out an envelope, and placed it neatly on the table, her name elegantly written on the front. What's this? She asked, her tone less sharp now. Something you'll want to read, but not here. At home, I replied. You're being all mysterious and overdramatic, she said. Maybe, I admitted, getting up and sliding my chair in. Or maybe by morning, you'll be the one pleading for forgiveness. She scoffed and rolled her eyes. I walked away before her laugh was done, letting her relish her moment. The gentle, melodic tunes from the jazz band wafted through the room, and she felt like she had a handle on things. But it wouldn't be long before everything began to unravel, and by the next day she'd be drowning in a sea of remorse instead of sipping wine. Some folks think of betrayal as a sudden, life-altering moment, an exact time when everything changes. For me, though, it wasn't dramatic like that. It was more like a slow leak in the background of our marriage, something I didn't fully notice until I was already neck deep. At first, it was little things, a text popping up early in the morning, a kiss that missed the mark, or the blank stare she'd give when I talk about my day. Initially, I brushed it off as stress. We both had high-stress jobs full of long hours and late-night meetings. She worked at this hip marketing firm that was all about being young and agile. Little did I know those words applied beyond their business deals. But I didn't want to be that paranoid husband. I kept telling myself that every couple hits rocky patches, and after 8 years together, it was bound to happen. Then came the new gym membership. She hadn't been to a gym since our honeymoon. Yet now she was going regularly around 8 p.m., fully made up. I teased her once about it, just once, and she lashed out. "Can I take care of myself without you making it something nasty?" That word, nasty, stuck with me. It was always the pattern with her. If I asked questions, it meant I didn't trust her. If I brought up my worries, it meant I was controlling. If I expressed my feelings, it meant I was insecure. She made it seem like my fault while she quietly pulled further away. But it's hard to deny the truth forever. Everything cracked wide open on a Sunday. She'd left her phone on the counter while she showered, and it lit up with a text from someone named Eric, complete with a kiss emoji. That was all I needed to see. She came out of the bathroom singing, wrapped in a towel, and saw me with her phone. Her face didn't change at first, but when she saw my expression, she froze. Her first words? "You went through my phone." Not a word of explanation or denial, just straight to accusing me. I raised my hands and said I hadn't opened anything, just saw the message. Her comeback was, "You had no right," without a note of regret or a scrap of explanation. That was the moment I knew. It wasn't just about the affair itself. I might have been able to forgive that. It was the nonchalance, the ease with which she dismissed her promise, as if I was the one at fault for noticing. The next few weeks were a blur. She pretended like everything was normal, talking about errands or watching TV like nothing was amiss. But something inside me changed. I went through my daily routines at work with a smile, but started scheming at home. I installed a security camera in the living room for package theft, and she didn't question it. Quietly, I backed up our shared files, messages, everything. I watched, noted her habits, her shifting moods, even the scent she carried home. When you stop reacting and pay attention, you learn a lot. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I was gearing up for the truth to reveal itself. The final piece came from her sister, Melanie. She called me, a bit buzzed, guilt-ridden but determined. She couldn't keep the charade anymore, despite blood ties. "Look in her email, particularly her events folder," she advised. I did and found it. Dinner dates, hotel stays, fake business trips, all tied to someone named Ray. Turns out Ray wasn't a woman, it was a cover name. I dug deeper and discovered Eric's full identity. Eric Randolph, her younger coworker, a decade younger, his social media plastered with gym selfies and cryptocurrency nonsense. Hustle hard, cheat harder perhaps? But I didn't confront her, not just yet. So there I was that night, just chilling on the porch with a drink, staring at a sky that felt way more authentic than the weird vibes in my marriage lately. I wasn't crying or raging or anything. I felt surprisingly calm and was starting to make some decisions. I figured if she was playing her role, then why shouldn't I? And when everything finally came to light, I was determined to make sure everyone knew the real story and who the bad guy truly was. Melanie tipping me off wasn't the end. It was just the beginning for me. After piecing things together, tracking down who Eric was, and sifting through emails and calendar invites, everything started to make sense. They thought they were being clever, but they missed a few spots. She'd booked a hotel room, claiming it was for an out-of-town meeting. Only it was nowhere near her office. It was at one of those boutique hotels known for keeping things quiet. No lobby cameras, and if the "Do Not Disturb" sign was out, room service left you alone. I wasn't rushing around like a madman or anything. Nope, I was gathering evidence. Printed emails, captured screenshots of the calendar, and everything. Her flirty text with Rai, they were the proof I needed to show what was really going on. And acting like a concerned husband at the hotel reception with my ID, well, that helped me get the dates and room confirmations. It wasn't illegal, just a bit of crafty persuasion. But the real jewel was the video footage. That's where I had to get inventive. Melanie had tossed me that event folder tip and said something that stayed with me. She said my wife was basically boasting, claiming I'd never walk away, saying I was too passive even if I found out. That wasn't just about her cheating anymore. It was about control. She wasn't simply unfaithful. She was betting on me staying idle. That was my cue to flip the situation. I wanted her to experience the fallout of her own actions, to sit in the silence like I had, but in a whole new way. Not as a victim, but as an onlooker to her own collapse. So I hit up Jordan, a college buddy who owed me a big favor after I helped him through a tough physics semester. He's running a tech security business now. I asked him, "Can I do this legally if it's in my house?" He confirmed it was okay. "You prefer audio or video?" he asked. "Both," I said, and he gave me a nod. A few days later, a tiny camera was nestled on the bedroom bookshelf, and another was stashed in a charging station in the guest room, where she'd have her private calls. It didn't take long. On a Thursday, I told her I had a work dinner. That was a lie. I was parked just a few blocks away behind a florist shop, just sitting there, looking at my steering wheel and a live stream on my phone. At 7:12 p.m., she walked in wearing that red dress that had long stopped being for me. By 7:31, Eric showed up. I watched them standing in the hallway, her kissing his neck casually. He called her babe. She said she was amazed I hadn't figured it out yet. Then they laughed. That laugh, man. It wasn't the physical stuff that got to me, or the sneaking around. But that laughter was different. They weren't only being sneaky, they were finding humor in making a fool of me. I didn't lose my cool, just waited until they were asleep, then quietly slipped in and grabbed those SD cards. Everything was backed up. I kept one copy, gave one to my lawyer, and sent another to Eric's girlfriend. Yeah, he had one too, and I'd tracked her down on LinkedIn. She worked in marketing at the same company. But I wasn't done there. For a few weeks, I moved like a ghost, got a solid lawyer, explained the situation, shared everything I had. We prepared divorce papers. I moved my own money, no funny business, just personal funds. Froze her credit card payments, canceled the subscriptions she used nonstop. Packed up my sentimental items, stored everything meaningful to me safely away. Step by step, I was disentangling her from my life, and she was clueless, too engrossed in her little bubble with Eric. Meanwhile, I was quietly pulling the rug out from under her. It was almost poetic, getting ready for the final act. I put some thought into picking just the right restaurant for dinner. It was a little fancy, but really cozy, giving off that vibe of, yeah, I really thought this through. It was the perfect spot, intimate enough to make her feel comfortable, yet classy enough to show her I still cared. She showed up in this stunning black dress, and her smile said she thought we were there to mend fences. I kept my cool, not giving any hint about the whirlwind I was about to unleash. By the next morning, her life, built by her own choices, would crumble in ways she couldn't escape. She didn't send me any messages that night, and honestly, I expected that. She was probably stewing over what I said at dinner. By dawn, you'll be begging for forgiveness. Or maybe she just figured out that I'd already gone home. Her first call rolled in at 12:47 a.m., but I let it ring out. She immediately called back 3 minutes later and followed up with a panicked text. "What did you do?" No small talk, just straight up panic. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my bourbon, and waited. At 1:14 a.m., she texted again, asking why her card wasn't working. I couldn't help but chuckle. Then another frantic one about her Uber account being locked. I didn't respond, just let her stew. At 2:08 a.m., she switched to email with a desperate subject line, "Please talk to me." I didn't even bother opening it, just sent it directly to my lawyer. The serious hit would come with the morning light. At 8:03 a.m., I fired off an email to her boss and HR. Attached were hotel receipts showing her stays that overlapped with supposed client meetings and some telling text exchanges with Eric, making jokes about skipping work. I wrote ethics violation, misuse of company time and funds in the subject line. By 10 that morning, both she and Eric were placed on administrative leave. At 11 a.m., I got a LinkedIn message from Julia, Eric's now ex. She kept it brief. I saw everything, thank you. Turns out you're not alone. I didn't write back. She had her own part covered. By noon, I noticed our shared calendar, the one she used to fake meetings, suddenly had two new entries: attorney meeting and divorce filing, personal items pickup. But she didn't show up. Instead, the calls kept coming, and I let each one go unanswered. Finally, around 7 p.m., she left a voicemail filled with desperation, asking to talk, owning up to the chaos she created, and admitting that she thought I didn't care anymore. She once said she'd never beg. Yet here we were. I played the voicemail again, and her voice was worlds apart from that composed manner she had at dinner. But I wasn't done with this. At 2:30 in the afternoon, she showed up at the house, knocking, ringing, calling out my name. From the window upstairs, I watched as she stood there, makeup running, clutching her phone like it was her last line of defense. She looked so small, not at all like the woman who boldly told me she didn't regret a thing just days ago. She knocked again, asking for just 5 minutes. I didn't rush to the door. I wanted her to feel the weight of the silence. Eventually, I opened it, not for a chat, but for closure. Her face lit up with a glimmer of hope as she moved toward me, thanking me. I stopped her. "This isn't about making up," I said, and she froze. "I'm not here to forgive or fight either." Her look turned to confusion. "I'm only here to return what's yours." I handed her a small box with her wedding ring, a spare key, and a copy of the divorce papers. On top, there was an envelope marked with her own past words. "What's this?" she whispered. "Your words," I replied. Inside was every text, email, calendar event, and photo, all the proof of her lies and excuses. "I didn't want you to forget who wrote this story." She tried to say something, but all that came out was a broken sigh, the sound of reality finally sinking in. I went back inside and closed the door behind me. No loud noises, no shouting, just a quiet sense of finality. Surprisingly, I didn't feel angry or gratified. There was just a sense of calm. It wasn't that I had broken her spirit, but she'd finally encountered the real me, the version she'd misjudged, the guy who doesn't run after people but sits calmly with a glass of wine, knowing she'd be seeking forgiveness by morning without my needing to utter a word. The last glance I got of her was through the window. She stood in the driveway for about 20 minutes after I closed the door. She wasn't crying like I expected, and if she had, it wasn't with the frantic sobs I'd heard on her voicemail. It was more muted, resigned, like she understood she was already drowning without anyone to save her. Eventually, she got into her car and drove off, leaving the box behind. I left it out on the porch overnight and moved it to the yard's edge the next day, pinning a small note saying, "Return to sender." It rained that day, soaking everything in the box by the time she came back for it. I didn't watch. I just heard her tires crunch on the driveway, the door slam, and the wet sound of soggy cardboard peeling off the ground. She didn't knock again. That was the end. No dramatic blow-ups or cheating scandals, no tossing clothes onto the lawn, just a quiet, calculated ending that stung more than anger. Being forgotten. You would think that would have been enough. Divorce papers signed, finances split, reputations bruised but not destroyed. I could have wrapped it up and moved forward, but there was still one thing left to do. It wasn't just her actions that got to me. It was how she painted me as the clueless husband, the oblivious fallback guy, the temporary choice until something better came along, the guy you could fool, use, leave, and still expect to be loyal, hoping for another opportunity. That version of me disappeared when she said, "I don't regret a thing." So I penned a letter. Not a manifesto or a raving internet post, just a message to her parents, to Eric's girlfriend, and to my family. The folks who had sensed something was wrong but chose not to get involved. It was brief. "I'm not here to justify her actions or mine. What happened between us is finished. No need for speculation. If you want answers, ask her. If she tells the truth, you'll know it all. If she lies, you'll understand even more. Daniel." I sent it off. Then I shut down the shared email account, canceled our joint phone plan, changed all my passwords, and erased our wedding photos from my cloud. Not out of spite, just didn't want to remember that chapter. I kept one photo, storing it on a drive marked before I knew. The house feels different now, lighter. I didn't sell or remodel it, I just reclaimed it. Little things like putting up my own artwork instead of her trendy fixations, cooking the food I liked without worrying about her diet crazes, and letting the night be peaceful rather than a silent sentence. Some nights I sit on the back porch with a drink, listening to the wind in the trees. I do this even when she was around, but those times felt like an escape. Now it's like coming home. She still sends me texts now and then. Nothing major, just breadcrumbs. Hope you're well. Can we talk? I miss your steadiness. I don't reply, not to be mean, but some things don't deserve a response. I don't hate her, which surprises people who know the whole story. I don't wish her harm. I've just come to realize I wasn't the weak one. I was the storm she didn't see coming. The guy who didn't need to yell because he didn't have to. And when she quietly said across the restaurant, "I don't regret a thing," I simply smiled, knowing she'd really understand what regret means by morning.